And so I think it's a little bit of, I don't want to call it a weak agent, but it's an easy out. It's like, well, I'm not going to negotiate my commission, but I'll definitely negotiate the future commission of a random stranger that may or may not bring a buyer to us. And so that's how it starts. The other thing that it is common is a lot of people will look on the MLS and see what everyone else is offering, right? As sold comps. And this is something that's not going to be able to happen in a couple of weeks because they're just taking away that field. So you won't be able to see, and it's not going to be on any active agent listings at all. So agents used to say, it looks like everyone else is offering 2.5%. Do you want to offer 2.5%? And then that might be where some people say 2%. Now, in this new world that we're going to live in here in a couple weeks, there's kind of two ways to go about it on the buyer's agent side. Like when you're working with buyers, you obviously will get your buyer broker signed with an amount, and then you can either one call the agents on all of the showings and say, I'm curious, are your sellers offering a commission um, to buyers? And you could let them know, like, we have a 3% agreement signed, or you don't even have to tell them. They might ask. But 3%, let's just imagine you get it signed there. So if they're like, we're a 2%, 2.5%, 3%, you can decide, is that enough? Or are you going to want to ask for more commission? Now, what I am planning to do is not ever make that phone call. With the offer, there is an addendum that talks about how you are going to get paid. Like the seller will pay you X%. So instead of calling, I'm going to take the second option, and I'm just going to, with every offer that I send in, I'm going to make sure that I include that addendum that says the same exact percentage as my agreement that I have with my buyers, my buyer broker agreement. So let's say it's 3%. I'm going to say, here's my offer, and here's the addendum saying that the seller will pay me 3% at closing. And it just becomes a whole nother thing that I'm negotiating in the offer. And if they were already planned on 3%, we're good. If they plan on anything less, it's just a whole nother term that they have to look at and see what they're netting. So it doesn't change a whole lot, um, except for now we're negotiating that piece of it as well. Yeah, I mean, way better to just send over things rather than talk to anyone on the phone. I'll probably still talk to agents, but that's not going to be one of my questions because I don't care what they're offering. If they're offering 1%, I'm going
This
to ask for 3% anyway. If they're offering 3%, I'm going to ask for them to sign saying that they're paying me 3%. So either way, I'm going to send over an addendum. So I might ask, like, hey, do you have any other offers? Um, I had these questions, things like that, but I'm not ever going to ask about that.
Oh,
'Cause
that's super helpful to hear because yesterday at the meeting, I was feeling a little overwhelmed. Like, it's already hard to negotiate for yourself, especially as a new agent. And I'm like, one more thing to negotiate over the phone and stick up for yourself. I'd much rather put it in writing. And I don't mind talking to people on the phone and representing my client, but that's really helpful to hear that way. And they did talk about the addendum yesterday, but I heard more about negotiating it on the phone.
On the phone. Yeah, yeah, that's what I got to.
That
Like
didn't sound
it
very
was
fun
gonna
to
be
me at
part of the
all.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you make the call and they're like, we're 2%, like you can decide, okay, do I just go with what they said, or now am I adding more in and do I have to raise the price? Like you're just introducing complications to your life. So I'm going to try to keep it simple and just say, pay me 3%. Which, to be honest, it happens now. Like today, if you are writing an offer and you look on the MLS and they say that they're offering 2%, there is a clause that you can add to the addendum that says we're increasing the commission by 1%. So it will be a total of 3% paid to my brokerage. And that is normal as of today. So like I said, nothing's really changing. It's more like we're getting different forms to do the same kind of an idea. The biggest thing is we're going to go blind in with the commission, but we know what we're going to get paid from the buyers. We just have to figure out how it's going to be all wrapped into all of this, right? Is it wrapped in the price and the sellers or the listing agent are paying it? Is it wrapped into the loan and the loan officer technically is getting it for us by raising their interest rate, something like that? Or are the buyers going to come up with the cash? Those are kind of
Yeah,
like the big three.
that part about it's part of the like closing costs. That's what the guy Eric said
Mhm.
yesterday, right?
Yep.
Basically,
And
like there's gonna be a way to find that money. Uh,
mhm.
what I
Well, and
got
that's
was
something that's happening right now, right? Loan officers need to get paid, and that's what all the closing costs that they have are. And if you want a loan, you have to pay the closing costs. And if you don't have any money and you don't ask the sellers for closing costs as part of the offer, the loan officer can actually wrap that into their rate. So rather than like, I don't know, like a 6.5% rate, maybe it's like a 6.625 or something like that, 6.75. Like they're raising the rate, and then the company, the loan company, whoever issues the mortgage will pay those closing costs because they're getting a higher rate. It's that same idea that they've been doing for closing costs for the loan. Now we can just get paid that way as well. So it's definitely doable.
yeah.
So
And
I think that's
since
good. I think we're all worried
we
for
are
no
gonna be
reason.
sellers agents as we are trying to be buyers agents, or we are trying to be both, why not to work for the other agent? I mean, if I am on the seller side, say, let's pay them what is fair. And no one would be like wondering, oh, should we pay them less? Uh, it's at the end, I think it's the same value proposition, even like either if you are selling or buying,
Yeah.
it's it's the same.
Yeah,
You're
you're doing
working
different
for.
actions, but you are adding value to them. And so as long as you can communicate that up front, then it will be easy. Now with sellers,
Uh-huh.
I suggest that you tell people like kind of Dean was mentioning this with his 10% rule. So how that breaks down is he says, I'm a 3% agent. I suggest we pay 3% to the buyer's agent. The buyers might ask for up to 3% in closing costs, and you're going to have about 1% of fees, like title fees and things like that at closing. So let's plan on 10%. I think you should do something very similar to that. Even if they said, look, we're willing to offer 2%, be like, great, I'm going to do the math as if an agent comes in and says, our offer is only good if you pay me 3%. And so let's plan on the worst case scenario because they might ask for 3%. They might ask for 3% in closing costs. And I'm 3%. So we're already at 9 plus your other fees. We're at 10%. Like that could be very real. Now, all of those are negotiable except for the title fees. You can't really change those, but we can say we're not going to pay a full 3% to a buyer's agent. We're not going to pay full 3% in concessions. Please don't negotiate against me because I promise I will add value. But so all of these things, like we almost need to prepare them for the worst case scenario is it will cost 10% to sell your house. The best case scenario is we get an unrepresented buyer that does everything on their own. You pay me 3%, you have title of 1%, and we're at 4% of closing. So we're somewhere between 4 and 10% of whatever you sell it for is what it will cost you. But it's all
Can you
negotiable as we're
yeah,
going.
can you please repeat the three for the seller, three for the
Yep.
buyer,
Three
and
for me because
three?
I'm your seller's agent, three for the buyer's
Mhm.
agent. And now we could offer less, but they might come and ask for a full 3%. So let's plan on worst case scenario, 3%. Then buyers can ask for up to 3% in closing
Oh,
costs. Usually it's not a full 3%, so that's usually less than that. And then title fees, home warranties, all of that, it's about 1%. To be honest, it's not a full 1% either, but then
Mhm.
you look a lot better and it makes math easier to say 10%. Because then you're like, oh, you're selling a $500,000 house, it's going to cost you 50 grand at the most. Hopefully it
At
will
the
be
most.
less and you'll end up,
Yes. If we pay less, you
yeah,
look really good.
yeah. Yeah, you might be like 20 grand of total costs, but it could be all the way up to 50 grand, depending on buyer's agent, concessions, things like that.
Yeah. Can I make one other question?
Yeah.
Um, I I bought a car, or I was trying to buy a car, and no, I bought this car, and my husband, when we came back home, he was like, "This is where they got us," because everything was going really good. I was interested, but not in a hurry. He was like there, but not saying anything about what I was asking, deciding what I was driving at that moment, trying different cars. So they didn't see an urgency, or, like very chill. But then the guy said, "How much do you want to pay?" And my husband, that was the first time we went to a dealership. And then my husband said, "That's when they charge us whatever they wanted because of that question. How much do you want to pay?" And
Mm,
and that's where they knew that they could put us in a service warranty, and offered us more things, and we ended up paying a lot of money.
mm.
And that's what that was his feeling, because I think I told you my husband doesn't like to negotiate. Like, it is what it is. But uh he had that impression. So I heard a lender saying, "How much do you want to pay?" And I was like, "Whoa, what's this?" Is this the same thing? Or how do you know the lender is doing like the best they can?
Um, it's a little different in the mortgage world, because what they're trying to do with that number is work backwards into the approved price, like what
Or
they
the
could offer on a
price, that
price, right?
how
Because
far
if,
they
yeah,
can
let's
go?
say you want to
Okay.
pay $2,000 a month, they can figure out, well, $2,000 a month at this interest rate, you could get a loan about this much. And so with their down payment plus that loan, you could get that. Now, if you wanted to be at 3,000 a month, that's going to increase everything. And so they can kind of do the math. So most people think in monthly expenses. And so
Okay. Oh,
knowing
okay.
knowing what they want to do. Now, you can always keep a loan officer honest by saying that we're going to get another opinion and see what someone else says, another loan officer, right? So if you have two
Would you
loan
do it?
officers that
Would you
you
tell
ask
them?
to run rates and things like that, and let them know I'm going to talk to multiple loan officers, then you're going to get the best rate because you'll have two different people almost like bidding each other down.
Okay, okay. And is it something that you would recommend me to do?
Usually, yeah, I like to have two people. Now I have my favorite one that I send most of my stuff to, and it's almost like I want you to use this person, which is Jake, by the way. But it's like Taylor that's in Security National, Mariah's dad. You could call a couple of these other people and say, hey, I want to get a second opinion, see if you can beat my loan officer. And I know that they're good at what they do. And so that way Jake is always giving me the best numbers because he knows like I'm gonna go to him first, but he will probably be shopped. So he's gonna give me the
Okay,
best deal that he possibly can.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe in just the fact that you mentioned that, like, I would like them to see another person, Do you think they would come back and say, "Hey, I don't take him somewhere else. I can do this."
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay,
Sometimes
okay,
they'll say that, or they'll even say, "Let me go back and see what else I can run with the numbers." And so sometimes it ends up being a little bit better because of it. Other times they're already giving you the best price and they're like, "This is what we can do."
okay,
And
yeah, which
and then
is
you'll talk
yeah.
to someone else and you're like, "Dang, my first guy's way better."
Okay, okay, perfect. Yes, yes, we are interviewing um one person on Friday. We did an interview with the lender yesterday. They have to fix some things that they didn't think were happening with a car loan. So the credit score credit was a little bit lower than they were expecting. But yeah, things are moving for me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Love
you.
it. Amy, they're gonna add an addendum, is what I hear. If you have a BBA signed till the end of the year and they don't go under contract before August 17th, we'll just get a quick addendum signed, is what I hear. We could probably get a brand new whole addendum. I'll look into that more, talk to Dean, and then next week in team meeting, we actually have um he's some attorney for the state or the board or the MLS. I forget what he is. He knows more than anyone else. And so yeah, I imagine he'll clarify a few of those things.
Thank you.
CEO of the MLS, Cameron.
MLS, that's what he is. Yeah,
MLS CEO
there you
for
go.
Tuesday.
MLS CEO. So he's gonna, yeah, you don't want to miss next week's team meeting either, because we're gonna beat this horse to death. So, okay, go crush it today. Make a whole bunch of phone calls. Reminder, we're on C and K. Today is the last day of July. So go crush it. And I'll see you guys all later.
Thank you so much.
Bye.